Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have campaigned against this HS2 project ever since 2010, up and down the line. I never believed the original 35 billion price tag. Furthermore, it only would have benefited rich businessmen and driven businesses from the north of England to London. It would have had the opposite effect. Has the moment not come, rather than having another reset, to recognise this is a failure? Let's scrap HS2. Let's use the tens of billions of pounds we can save in the next decade to upgrade railway lines across the entirety of the United Kingdom to the benefit of many millions, and spend the rest on other national priorities in these financially straitened times. Surely the time has come to scrap the entirety of the project and recognise we've got it wrong.
Yeah.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we are not going to be a country that spends over £30 billion on rail infrastructure but then never sees a train running on it. We've already seen too much waste. I'm interested that he is advocating more. We also have significant capacity constraints between Birmingham and London. He seems not to want to do anything about that, but I think those two great cities in our country deserve a railway that's fit for the 21st century. I'm just sorry that he doesn't.
Dave Robertson.
Deputy Speaker, my constituency is the only one in the country which has HS2 Phase 1, Phase 2A and Phase 2B in it. And when we say that the line will not continue north of Birmingham, that is not true, because it will cut through miles of Staffordshire through my constituency north of Birmingham until it rejoins the main line at Handsacre. The failings of HS2 Limited have been clear to my constituents for years, and hearing today what we've always expected and the dereliction of oversight from the previous government is quite frankly shocking. People across Lichfield, Burntwood and the villages will be furious, and they are quite right to do so. Farmers and landowners and businesses in my constituency have been fighting tooth and nail with HS2 for years to just get them to do the job right. Whether it's compulsory purchases that have never been paid, temporary possessions which come with multitudinous back and forth, and land agents taking massive fees over things that should have been sorted years ago, crop loss payments that never come, and many, many, many more. The people in Street A have had to deal with ongoing roadworks around a junction which has become far too overcomplicated by trying to put a railway underneath it, have seen the village at times almost cut off. People are absolutely sick of HS2. The failings of that organisation are absolutely multitudinous, and the failings of the party opposite to fully hold it to account should be an embarrassment to them and an embarrassment to this country. I really do welcome a reset, but it has got to lead to meaningful change on this. Can she give me and my constituents any assurances that this will be delivered as quickly as it possibly can be, with as little disruption as we can get away with? And can she finally give us a timeline on when the safeguarded land will be returned to landowners, because it's been going on for far too long?
I share my honourable friend's anger about this issue, and he is a powerful advocate for his constituents and the disruption that they have endured, and I agree entirely with him that it is a dereliction of duty on the part of the previous government, the way that this project was handled. It's why we've appointed new leadership. It's why we're accepting all the recommendations of the James Stewart Review, and why we're going through this fundamental reset. As soon as I have received advice from the new Chief Executive about the revised cost and schedule, I will be updating him along with other honourable members of this House.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It may surprise her, but I actually have some sympathy with the Secretary of State for inheriting the HS2 nightmare. But when she receives the updated budget and timeframe, is there a cost and a timeline at which point she says enough is enough, it's better to stop, or is it an open-ended chequebook?
If the honourable gentleman had actually bothered to read the spending review last week, he will have seen that we have committed £25 billion over the next 4 years. That enables work to be taken forward, and I will be, as I have said on a number of occasions in this session, updating the House when I have further information available about both the overall cost envelope, the estimated final cost at completion, and the anticipated schedule.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With a decade of delay and costs spiralling to eye-watering sums of anywhere between 60 and 100 billion pounds, and now with credible allegations of fraud within the supply chain, Can I ask the Secretary of State what steps the government will be taking to recover hard-working taxpayers' money from fraud, hold those responsible to account, and announce a final stop of waste of money?
I've said on a number of occasions, Madam Deputy Speaker, that billions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been wasted by constant scope changes, ineffective contracts and bad management. That is what this reset of HS2 is all about. It's why we've appointed the new leadership, and it's why we're fundamentally changing the governance structures. As I said in answer to previous questions, the matter about potential fraud in the supply chain is being investigated by HMRC, and we will be providing updates to the House as and when further information is available. Mr. Speaker, with permission, I'd like to make a statement on HS2. As a London councillor over 15 years ago, I remember hearing the then Labour government's bold plans for high-speed rail, to link our major cities, to address the capacity needs of the future, and in the words of the then Prime Minister Gordon Brown, to join the high-speed revolution sweeping the world. It was a vision of a confident nation, a clear signal our great towns and cities in the Midlands and the North, with potential that had been untapped at best and ignored at worst, could be places of opportunity and aspiration again. That was the promise of HS2. But after a decade and a half of Tory timelines planned then delayed, routes drawn up then cancelled, budgets calculated then blown, promises made then broken, we inherited a project that had lost the trust of the public, that created an image of a Britain woefully unable to deliver big infrastructure projects, and that axed swathes of the country it was originally meant to serve. Phase 1 could end up becoming one of the most expensive railway lines in the world, with projected costs soaring by £37 billion under previous Conservative governments, and £2 billion of taxpayers' money sunk into Phase 2 work before it was cancelled by the previous government. There was also clear evidence of poor management. Despite the 2020 Okavi review advising that government halt construction contracts pending improvements in price and simpler engineering, they pressed ahead regardless. It has been no less than a litany of failure, and today I'm drawing a line in the sand, calling time on years of mismanagement, flawed reporting and ineffective oversight. It means this government will get the job done between Birmingham and London. We won't reinstate cancelled sections we can't afford, but we will do the hard but necessary work to rebuild public trust, and we've not wasted any time. Since July, we have appointed new leadership of HS2 Limited to turn this project around. We've made clear to the new Chief Executive, Mark Wilde, that the priority is building the rest of the railway safely at the lowest reasonable cost, even if this takes longer. We've started the year-long task of fundamentally resetting the project, including commissioning infrastructure expert James Stewart to lead a review into governance and oversight. As part of that reset, we have reduced financial delegations to HS2 Limited, placing a lid on spiralling costs until the reset is complete and we regain confidence. And we've supported Mark Wilde's review of the size and cost of HS2 as an organisation. But today we're going further. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm we've published the landmark James Stewart review and the department's response. The review, commissioned in October of last year by my predecessor, was a tough, independent look at how the Department for Transport and Government delivers major projects. The Government not only welcomes the review, but we have accepted all the recommendations. My department is already delivering on these, specifically across 5 key areas. First, the lack of oversight and scrutiny. Quite simply, there have been too many dark corners for failure to hide in. The Ministerial Task Force, set up to provide oversight of HS2, had inconsistent attendance from key ministers, including the then Transport Secretary and the then Chief Secretary to the Treasury. The Government has re-established the task force with full senior attendance as per the review's recommendations. A new performance programme and shareholder boards will offer much needed oversight and accountability. Secondly, the report highlights HS2 could cost the taxpayer millions more than planned. We'll stop this spiralling any further by delivering all the recommendations on cost control. That starts with HS2 fundamentally changing their approach to estimating costs. It includes certainty over funding, which the spending review has given. And it also means HS2 working with suppliers so their contracts incentivise saving costs for taxpayers. As far as I'm concerned, suppliers should make a better return the more taxpayer money they save. Thirdly, the review identified a deficit in capability and skills, with a fundamental lack of trust between my department and HS2 Limited. I am clear both capability and cultural issues within HS2 must be addressed. The new Chief Executive is already strengthening the organisation, including filling critical gaps in areas such as commercial expertise. And he will be backed by Mike Brown, announced today as the new chair. This is a new era of leadership the project desperately needs, with Mike bringing significant experience as a former TfL commissioner. Mark and Mike were part of the team with me that turned Crossrail into the Elizabeth line. We've done it before and we'll do it again. Fourthly, Euston Station. Between 2019 and 2023, HS2 Limited provided initial designs for Euston Station, coming in almost £2 billion over budget. When asked for a more affordable option, they offered one, costing £400 million more than the first attempt. The word affordable was clearly not part of the HS2 lexicon. The combined cost for these two failed designs, which has now been written off, was more than £250 million. What's more, the previous government announced a Euston ministerial task force. Unbelievably, the task force never met. Mr. Speaker, this government recognises Euston's huge potential, and we've already committed funding to start the tunnelling from Old Oak Common to Euston, and we'll set out more details in our 10-year infrastructure strategy. And finally, we will use James Stewart's findings to transform infrastructure delivery across government. Implementing real change in how we deliver infrastructure is not just for the Department for Transport. This government is committed to implementing these recommendations and adopting a new approach to delivering infrastructure, as will be set out in our upcoming 10-year infrastructure strategy. In that spirit, the Prime Minister has also asked the Cabinet Secretary to consider the implications for the civil service and wider public sector of the issues raised in the report, including whether further action or investigation is warranted. Mr. Speaker, we're wasting no time in delivering on this review, and I will update Parliament on our progress through my 6 monthly reports, even if the information is uncomfortable. Because for a government that last week pledged billions in capital investment for new major projects, that believes in the power of transport infrastructure to improve lives and deliver on our plan for change, this level of failure cannot stand. We will learn the lessons of the past 15 years and restore our reputation of delivering world-class infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, I've spoken about our inheritance. I've spoken about James Stewart's review. Let me finally turn to Mark Wild's initial assessment, which lays bare the shocking mismanagement of the project under previous governments. I will place a copy of his interim findings in the library. He stated in no uncertain terms, the overall project with respect to cost, schedule and scope is unsustainable. Based on his advice, I see no route by which trains can be running by 2033 as planned. He reveals costs will continue to increase if not taken in hand, further outstripping the budget set by the previous government. And he cannot be certain that all cost pressures have yet been identified. Mr. Speaker, it gives me no pleasure to deliver news like this. Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been wasted by constant scope changes, ineffective contracts and bad management. There are also allegations that parts of the supply chain have been defrauding taxpayers, and I have been clear these need to be investigated rapidly and rigorously. If fraud is proven, the consequences will be felt by all involved. Mr. Speaker, I have to be honest, it's an appalling mess, but it's one we will sort out. We need to set targets which we can confidently deliver, that the public can trust, and that will take time. But rest assured, where there are inefficiencies, we will root them out. Where further ministerial interventions are needed, I will make them without fear or favour. HS2 will finally start delivering on our watch. Mr. Speaker, years of mismanagement and neglect have turned HS2 into a shadow of that vision put forward 15 years ago. But this government was elected on a mandate to restore trust to our politics. That's why we won't shirk away from this challenge and why today we turn the page on infrastructure failures. I can think of no better mission than delivering new economic opportunities, new homes and commercial regeneration of an upskilled supply chain, all of which HS2 can still unlock. But no one should underestimate the scale of the reset required. Passengers and taxpayers deserve new railways the country can be proud of. The work to get HS2 back on track is firmly underway under this government, and I commend this statement to the House.
State Gareth Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for her statement today and for updating the House on the initial findings of the HS2 reviews, and I thank her as well for advance notice and copy of it. On the substance of the Secretary of State's statement, I believe there is broad consensus in this House today on the central point, which is that mistakes were made in the delivery of HS2. As the Secretary of State has noted, costs more than doubled, the project has been repeatedly delayed, and the pandemic completely changed travel patterns, undercutting the assumptions that guided the original plans and caused construction costs to rise sharply across the world, in some cases by up to 40%, as a result of the supply chain shortages as the world emerged from the crisis. It has long been apparent that HS2 was not going according to plan. Mr. Speaker, in my first 2 years as a member of this House, I sat on the Public Accounts Committee, then chaired by the Honourable Lady, the member for Hackney South and Shoreditch. In the summer of 2021, we published a report on HS2 raising serious concerns in a number of areas with recommendations for how to improve the project. In 2023, the previous government conceded that HS2 was not going to plan and made fundamental changes to it, and the result of that was the cancellation of the northern leg of HS2 and the creation of the Network North plan. Under that plan, £36 billion was to be diverted from the northern leg of HS2 to a multitude of transport projects that would benefit more people in more places more quickly than the then government believed the delivery of HS2 could. But we also recognise that the path that we took to reach that point was not perfect, far from it. And I will not today pretend that the Network North plan was not a product of mistakes we made in the handling of HS2, because it clearly was. As a country, we must learn from those mistakes and we must not repeat them. It is on that note, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would like to express my gratitude to Mark Wilde, the Chief Executive Officer of HS2, for his continued efforts in supporting the delivery of the project. Recognising his leadership in rescuing the Crossrail project in London, it was the Noble Lord Harper, then the Secretary of State for Transport, who appointed him to lead HS2 in May 2024. We are all encouraged to see him playing a leading role in overseeing the correction and completion of the project, because his experience will be invaluable in helping to get it back on track. I would also like to welcome the appointment of Mike Brown as the new chairman of HS2 Limited. Like the Secretary of State, I know him from my years in London politics when he was Commissioner of Transport for London. He is a very capable man, and I wish him well in his new role. The Secretary of State has informed the House of her intention to accept 89 recommendations from the independent review into HS2. I've not yet seen a copy of this report, which I believe is being released today. While we will need to study these proposals carefully before confirming our support for them, I can assure her that if they offer better value for taxpayers, we will back them. Finally, the Secretary of State has raised very serious concerns that taxpayers may have been defrauded by subcontractors. I would like to assure her that if that proves to be the case, I will share her anger and will support whatever action is necessary to get to the bottom of these allegations. I would request that she keeps the House informed as HS2 and HMRC's investigations progress. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to press the Secretary of State on a number of matters. In recent weeks, several projects have been announced by the government that are either funded by Network North or align with its commitments. However, we have yet to see a clear government commitment to either fully support the Network North plan or to scale it back. So can the Secretary of State now provide a definitive update on which elements will proceed and which will be abandoned? It has been reported that officials are considering a plan backed by the Mayor of Greater Manchester to build, and I quote, an HS2 light track between Birmingham and Crewe. Will she confirm if these reports are true? I would like to conclude by turning to the planning system more generally. The whole House will recall that HS2 grappled with legal challenges, High Court proceedings and judicial reviews, all of which added delay and cost. What assessment has the Secretary of State made of the extent to which legal challenges and judicial reviews delayed the delivery of HS2? How can future infrastructure projects be protected from excessive or politically motivated litigation? And finally, does the Secretary of State believe that sufficient action has been taken to prevent some of the more spurious concerns about such things as bats and newts obstructing future vital infrastructure projects?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his response and indeed for the tone in which he made his comments, and I was pleased to hear him acknowledge that mistakes had been made on HS2 by the previous government. I think he described the path as not being perfect. Mr. Speaker, I would go as far as saying it has been a shambolic mess. He did strike a sombre note in his remarks. I would ask him perhaps to consider going further once he's had the opportunity to read the full James Stewart report, because I do think an apology on the part of the party opposite for the mess that they left this infrastructure scheme in is undoubtedly warranted. I also thank him for the comments he made about the action that HS2 is taking with regard to the alleged fraud within the supply chain, and I can assure him that I will provide appropriate updates to this House on the progress with the HMRC investigation that is now underway. He also asked me to set out our plans for investment in transport in the Midlands and the North. His party, of course, took the decision to cancel HS2 north of Birmingham. They made wild promises about what they would do with the money that they claimed they were saving. He is kidding himself if he thinks that that money ever existed. What this government did last week in the spending review was set out £15.6 billion of money to invest in local transport schemes across the country, be that in Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle. His approach was a fantasy. He promised the moon on the stick and had absolutely no means to deliver. He asked me to set out the government's plans for enhancing rail connectivity further in the Midlands and the North, and I can assure him that further announcements will be being made, both as part of the government's 10-year national infrastructure strategy and beyond that in the weeks and months ahead. He also asked me to opine on the extent to which litigation has caused delays in the delivery of infrastructure project. He will know that through this government's planning and infrastructure bill, we are tackling this issue, limiting the number of judicial reviews and legal challenges that can be made, because unlike his party, this government is serious about delivering infrastructure. We are serious about providing the stable leadership that this country needs when it comes to infrastructure. I looked up before coming to the chamber today the number of rail ministers that existed in the department under his government, and it was a sum total of 18 in 12 years. It's no wonder that projects of like this were left in such a state of disarray. And so let me tell this House that just as this government has returned stability to the nation's economy, we will return common sense and stable leadership to the delivery of the nation's infrastructure too.
Chair of the Select Committee, Ruth Campbell.